The Galactic Alliance Military Academy floated in the neutral zone between three spiral arms, a crystalline structure that caught starlight and threw it back in prismatic displays. Inside, beings from 79 species moved through corridors designed to accommodate everything from methane breathers to silicon-based life forms. The Academy represented the pinnacle of interstellar cooperation, where the galaxy's finest young minds came to learn the art of warfare. At least, that was the official story. Deathworlders to the left, announced instructor Nescaler, their feathered crest rippling with colors that translated to mild disgust. Remember to maintain a 3-meter buffer zone from civilized species. DW7 shuffled to the designated area with 14 other humans and a handful of other hardy species. The classification Deathworlder meant they came from planets so hostile that most galactic citizens couldn't survive there for more than minutes. Earth, with its variable weather, tectonic activity, and aggressive biosphere, ranked among the worst. "Look at them," whispered a Zenthran cadet, their crystalline form chiming softly. "They actually need to consume other organisms to survive." "Barbaric." DW7 kept her expression neutral. She'd heard worse since arriving 3 weeks ago. The other cadets treated Deathworlders like amusing pets at best, potential menaces at worst. The fact that Earth had only been admitted to the Alliance 5 years ago, purely for political balance, didn't help. Today we discuss advanced combat theory. Nescaler continued, pulling up a holographic display. The 12 noble forms of engagement, as codified by the Altarian Council of Warriors in the 3rd millennium. DW7 listened with half an ear as Nescaler droned on about honor, proper stance, and the philosophical underpinnings of conflict. The forms were beautiful, she supposed, in the way that calligraphy was beautiful. Utterly impractical for actual combat, but aesthetically pleasing. A sharp chime cut through the lecture. Emergency priority. The entire class tensed as Admiral Zexthea's image materialized. "Cadets," the Admiral's synthesized voice filled the room. "Due to recent developments along the rim, your combat trials have been moved forward. They begin tomorrow at 0800 standard." The room erupted. Several methane breathers literally began hyperventilating, their tanks clouding with stress hormones. The Zenthran cadets' crystalline bodies rang with alarm frequencies. Even instructor Nescaler's crest went pale. "Tomorrow," shrieked Kitsku's, top of the class and heir to 3 trading conglomerates. "But we haven't finished memorizing the 5th form. The trials were supposed to be in 3 months. DW7 remained still, calculating. She caught the eye of another human across the room, who gave an almost imperceptible shrug. The other Deathworlders showed similar calm, which only seemed to agitate their classmates more. "Typical," muttered a Vrixie cadet, their tentacles writhing. "The primitives don't even understand what they're facing." After class, the Deathworlders gathered in their assigned recreation area, a reinforced chamber that could handle their excessive physical activity. "Combat trials tomorrow," said Marcus, a human from Colony World. They seemed pretty upset. "The trials are calibrated for standard galactic physiology," added Tex, whose species came from a world of constant volcanic activity. "Reaction times of 2.3 seconds, pressure tolerance of 1.2 atmospheres, standard gravity baseline." DW7 stretched, her joints popping. "So, basically Tuesday morning workout." They ran through what the Academy called extreme conditioning and what humans called light cardio. The other species required extensive cybernetic enhancement to perform at levels Deathworlders consider baseline. That evening, as DW7 reviewed combat footage in the library, she heard familiar snickering behind her. "Studying the forms, savage?" Kitsku's approached with their usual entourage. "I suppose your crude neural pathways need extra time to process civilized concepts." DW7 didn't turn around. "Just watching your previous trials. Interesting technique. Of course you'd be fascinated by proper form. Your species just discovered space travel, 5 years ago? Something like that. The combat trials aren't like the primitive brawls on your death world. They require grace, precision, adherence to the 12 forms." The Academy's combat units are programmed by the finest military minds in the galaxy. I'm sure they are. Kitsu's leaned closer, their bioluminescent patches flickering with amusement. You know why they really let Earth join the Alliance? Politics. The Council needed to appear inclusive. But everyone knows your kind will wash out within a generation. You can't overcome millions of years of civilized evolution with mere enthusiasm. DW7 finally turned, meeting Kitsu's compound. Eyes. We'll see tomorrow. The night passed quickly. DW7 didn't sleep much, but not from nerves. She was calculating, considering angles and approaches. The other Deathworlders were doing the same, she knew. They'd been underestimated since day one. Tomorrow would be interesting. The arena was a marvel of engineering, a vast space that could simulate any environment, gravity level, or atmospheric composition. Thousands of cadets filled the observation platforms, instructors and academy officials occupying the higher tiers. The combat trials were a significant event, determining placement, specialization, and future career paths. Welcome, cadets. Admiral Zexthia's voice boomed through the arena. The combat trials test your ability to apply theoretical knowledge in practical scenarios. You will face a MK-7 combat training unit, programmed with over 10,000 battle scenarios and capable of adapting to any fighting style. The Admiral paused for effect. The Academy record stands at 43 seconds, set by Vraxian Chukar 90 years ago. The average completion time is 4 minutes. Failure to defeat the unit within 10 minutes results in academic probation. The trials began with the highest-ranked cadets. Kitsu's went 5th, executing the forms with textbook precision. They lasted 2 minutes and 30 seconds before the combat unit's adaptive algorithms overcame their predictable patterns. Still, it was considered an excellent showing. Next, Deathworlder Designation 7. DW7 stepped onto the arena floor. The gravity adjusted to Earth normal, the atmosphere shifting to accommodate human physiology. She rolled her shoulders, feeling the familiar weight settle onto her frame. The MK-7 materialized, a sleek construct of adaptive armor and synthetic muscle, standing 3 meters tall. Its optical sensors fixed on her, processing stance, muscle tension, pupil dilation, heart rate. Combat trial begins in 3, 2, 1. Engage. The MK-7 moved with mechanical precision, assuming the first form stance. Its arms swept forward in the traditional opening gambit, a feint designed to test an opponent's adherence to proper response protocols. DW7 didn't move into second form. She didn't adopt any stance at all. Instead, she exploded forward with a speed that made several spectators gasp. The combat unit's processors worked furiously, trying to categorize her approach. It wasn't first form or second form or any recognized pattern. It was pure, efficient violence. Her palm strike connected with the unit's sensor array, not where the forms dictated, but where engineering logic suggested vulnerability. As the unit attempted to adapt, she was already moving, using its own mass against it, applying forces at angles the 12 forms never considered. The unit tried to recover, to establish distance, and resume proper combat protocols. But DW7 wasn't fighting by the rules of civilized engagement. She fought like someone who'd evolved on a world where hesitation meant death, where efficiency trumped elegance, where survival was the only art form that mattered. Her knee drove into what would be a vital joint on most constructed beings. Her elbow found the backup processor housing. She moved inside the unit's optimal engagement range, too close for its weapons to target effectively, turning its strength into liability. The final blow was almost anticlimactic. As the unit struggled to recalibrate, she simply grabbed its primary support strut and torqued. The sound of rending metal filled the arena as 600 pounds of advanced military hardware toppled backward. A precisely placed boot to its central processor ended the match. Time, the automated system announced. 6.04 seconds. Silence. The arena was utterly quiet. Thousands of beings from dozens of species stared at the small human female standing over the destroyed combat unit. Even the environmental systems seemed to pause. Then bedlam. Impossible! Shrieked someone from the Altarian delegation. Check the systems. There must be an error. She didn't use any of the forms. Instructor Nescaler's crest had gone translucent with shock. That was pure barbarism. Admiral Zexthea's synthesized voice cut through the chaos. Time confirmed. New Academy record. Cadet DW7. Report to Strategic Command immediately. As DW7 left the arena, she passed the other Deathworlders. Marcus gave her a small nod. Kex's heat signature flickered in what their species used as applause. None of them looked surprised. The meeting room in Strategic Command was designed to intimidate. The ceiling soared 10 meters high, walls covered in tactical displays showing current conflicts across the galaxy. 7 high-ranking officers sat in a semicircle, representing the Academy's leadership and several Alliance military branches. Explain, Admiral Zexthea commanded simply. DW7 stood at ease, a posture that somehow looked more dangerous than. Attention. Explain what, sir? That. Display. You ignored every principle of civilized combat. Yes, sir. Commander Vrex leaned forward, their insectoid features twitching with agitation. The 12 forms represent millennia of refinement. They're the cornerstone of honorable warfare. They're also predictable, sir. The combat unit knew every counter to every form, so I didn't use them. You fought like an animal, stated Instructor Nescaler, who'd been called to provide context. No grace, no philosophy, just violence. DW7 considered this. On Earth, we have a saying, no plan survives contact with the enemy. Pretty sure that applies to forms too. General Korthax, the only other Deathworlder in the room, spoke for the first time. They were Thraxian from a world of perpetual storms. Show them your training scores, Cadet. DW7 activated her personal display. The numbers that appeared caused another stir. Physical assessment. 300% above galactic baseline. Reaction time. 0.4 seconds. Stress tolerance. Readings that would kill most species. This is why Earth was classified as a death world, Korthax continued. Their evolutionary pressures created beings designed for survival above all else. No amount of philosophical combat training changes that. But the forms, Nescaler protested weakly, are beautiful. DW7 interrupted, surprising everyone. Their art. In a duel between equals who both know the forms, they're probably even effective. But real combat isn't a duel. It's not art. It's survival. Admiral Zexthea's optical implants whirred as they focused on her. You're saying our entire combat doctrine is flawed? I'm saying it's incomplete, sir. You prepare cadets to fight opponents who think like you, fight like you, value what you value. But what happens when you encounter something that doesn't? The question hung in the air. Recent reports from the Rim had described encounters with unknown entities, things that didn't follow any recognized patterns of behavior. She should be expelled, Commander Vrex stated flatly. She's violated every principle the Academy stands for. She completed the trial in 6 seconds, General Korthax countered. That's not a violation. That's a revelation. The debate continued for hours. DW7 stood motionless throughout, watching the officers argue about tradition versus effectiveness, honor versus survival. Finally, Admiral Zexthea called for silence. Cadet DW7, you are temporarily suspended from standard classes pending a full review. However, the Admiral paused. You will conduct a series of demonstration sessions, showing your approach to combat. Attendance is voluntary. For faculty only, Commander Vrex added quickly. For anyone who wishes to attend, Zexthea corrected firmly. Word spread quickly. Within hours, the entire Academy knew about the human who destroyed the combat unit in 6 seconds. Reactions were mixed, to put mildly. It's a fluke, insisted many cadets. Primitive luck. She cheated somehow, others claimed. Humans must have hacked the unit's programming. But some are curious. A few brave souls approached DW7 in the corridors, asking quiet questions when their peers weren't watching. The first demonstration session was scheduled for the next evening in Training Hall 7, the smallest venue available. Academy leadership expected perhaps a dozen attendees, mostly faculty studying this anomaly. They were wrong. When DW7 arrived, the hall was packed. Cadets from every species had crowded in, filling the space to capacity. More watched through security feeds in adjacent rooms. Even Kitskoos was there, trying to look inconspicuous in the back. "I guess word got out," W7 muttered. She started simple. Everyone here trained in the 12 forms. They're based on the idea that combat is a conversation, a dialogue between equals. But what if your opponent isn't interested in talking? She demonstrated, moving through scenarios. How to fight when outnumbered. How to use environment as a weapon. How to turn opponents' advantages into weaknesses. "You're thinking too much," she told a Zenthran volunteer after gently depositing them on the mat. "By the time you've decided which form to use, the fight's over." More sessions followed. Within a week, attendance had grown so large they had to move to the main arena. High-ranking officers began appearing, watching from the upper tiers. DW7 didn't modify her approach for them. "Survival isn't elegant," she explained during one session. "It's not about being stronger or faster. It's about being more willing to do what's necessary." She taught them to fight dirty, to use psychological warfare, to exploit weaknesses without mercy. Everything the Academy said was beneath civilized beings. And it worked. Cadets who implemented her techniques in training exercises saw immediate improvements. Kitskoos, swallowing considerable pride, asked for private lessons and went from the 85th percentile to the 95th in combat ratings. 3 weeks into the demonstrations, Admiral Zexthea called another meeting. "The rim situation has deteriorated," the Admiral began without preamble. "We're facing entities that don't respond to any known tactical doctrine. The Council is forming special response units. We want you to lead one." DW7 processed this. "With full autonomy. Within reason. I choose my own team. For volunteers, yes. Including other Deathworlders." The Admiral's optical implants dimmed slightly. "That's unprecedented." So it was a 6-second combat trial. The military often moved slowly, but Crisis had a way of accelerating things. Within a month, DW7 was Lieutenant DW7, leading Response Unit 7. Her team included 3 humans, 2 Thraxians, and surprisingly, 6 volunteers from civilized species, including Kitskoos. Their first mission was supposed to be reconnaissance. It became something else entirely when they encountered a Harvester swarm, entities that consumed entire ecosystems and had resisted every conventional approach. Response Unit 7 didn't use conventional approaches. They returned after 72 hours, battered but alive, with critical intelligence about Harvester vulnerabilities. Their tactics were described in the after-action report as unconventional, disturbing, and highly effective. More missions followed. The unit's reputation grew. They were called reckless by some, brilliant by others. But no one called them primitive anymore. 6 months after the combat trial that changed everything, DW7 stood before the assembled Academy, receiving the Star of Merit. Admiral Zexthea presented the award personally. "You've taught us something important," the Admiral said quietly. "That survival sometimes requires us to abandon our preconceptions about how things should be done." DW7 accepted the medal, then turned to address the crowd. Many of the faces were familiar now, no longer showing the automatic disdain she'd once seen. "When I first arrived here, I heard a lot about civilization versus barbarism, about evolved thinking versus primitive instinct. But I've learned something too." She paused, scanning the audience. "Every species here survived long enough to reach the stars. That means every single one of us comes from survivors. The only difference is how recently we've had to prove it." Her gaze found the Deathworlder section, then moved to the others. "The galaxy is getting more dangerous. Unknown threats are emerging. We need every advantage, every perspective, every hard-won survival trait." She stepped back, offering a salute that managed to incorporate elements from a dozen different military traditions. We're stronger together. All of us. Even the primitives. The applause started slowly, then built. It wasn't the polite acknowledgement typical of Academy ceremonies. It was something more genuine, more earned. Later, in a quiet moment, Kitsu's approached. Their bioluminescent patches flickered with what DW7 had learned was embarrassment. "I owe you an apology," Kitsu said. "I was incorrect in my assumptions." DW7 shrugged. "We all were. That's the point of learning, isn't it?" "Perhaps. Though I still think your approach lacks a certain aesthetic quality." "Probably. But it keeps people alive." Kitsu's considered this. "There's an old trader saying, 'The most beautiful ship is the one that reaches port.' I like that. Want to grab something to eat? I promise not to horrify you with my barbaric consumption of organic matter." "I would appreciate that." They walked toward the mess hall together, two beings from vastly different worlds finding common ground. Throughout the academy, similar connections were forming. Combat training now included both the 12 forms and what cadets had started calling Deathworlder dynamics. The change wasn't universal or immediate. Some instructors still insisted the old ways were best. Some cadets still viewed Deathworlders with suspicion. But the seed had been planted. A year later, when the Harvester crisis reached its peak, it was integrated units using hybrid tactics that turned the tide. Former critics became advocates. The Academy curriculum underwent its first major revision in 3 centuries. And in the historical archives, next to the record of the 6-second combat trial, someone had added a notation: "The day we learned that survival has many teachers." DW7 never saw that notation. By then, she was on the far side of the galaxy, leading missions into places no sane being would go, keeping the darkness at bay with a combination of sophisticated technology and primitive cunning. But that's another story entirely.